We also have Dr. Alex Amey, who is the strategic lead for interdisciplinary research at UKRI, which is UK Research and Innovation. She leads the team responsible for developing and delivering the new UKRI Cross Research Council Responsive Mode pilot scheme that launched in May 2023. Alex has been addressing the complexities of assessing interdisciplinary research applications and focusing on how projects can be designed to tackle the unique challenges associated with conducting research that requires deep interdisciplinary collaboration. She's now working with the research community to emphasise these requirements, including the need for genuine co-creation and integration with reciprocal benefits and learning across the disciplines involved. And then Alex's talk will follow the cross-council responsive mode pilot and address some of the challenges faced when assessing and developing such innovative and novel proposals.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. When I talk about interdisciplinary research, I like to sort of talk about, start off with this quote that says, "We are not students of some subject matter, but students of problems. And problems may cut right across the borders of any subject matter or discipline." And as you sort of should know, UKRI Research and Innovation is a combination of 9 organisations, and 7 of those are the individual research councils that support different, sort of have set remits for different research areas across UKRI. And because of this, sort of research applications have to come in to those responsive mode schemes and fit those remit criteria. And that means it's quite difficult in the past to sort of fund research that goes across those boundaries, across the disciplines of those research councils. And so we, in the last spending review, we were allocated £65 million to pilot a new scheme that would look at funding interdisciplinary research ideas emerging from the research community, and that crosses those boundaries of the research councils. And this scheme was aimed at complementing our existing opportunities for funding interdisciplinary research. So within the single councils, they fund interdisciplinary research where all the disciplines are covered by their remit, but also through strategic opportunities where different research councils will come together to address a strategic challenge. So the scheme was aimed at funding sort of short projects up to 2 years to maximise the budget that we had, and we expect to fund 36 grants in each round. And it's about supporting those projects that transcend and combine and significantly span disciplines that involving different knowledge spheres and also new methodologies. And applications have to be interdisciplinary, and I'm going to sort of break that down in a bit more detail for you, and also cross, as I said, cross the remit boundaries of at least 2 research councils. So we are doing this as a pilot scheme, and it is allowing us to assess the demand for this type of research, but also allow us to test and refine our processes for how we develop interdisciplinary research proposals and also assess them and address some of those challenges that Kristin talked about. So where we are at the moment is that we have awarded 36 grants in round 1, and they are now all underway. And we are currently assessing the full stage applications to round 2, and we will have those panels in November. As part of this scheme in the comms, we've created some videos for to support applicants in understanding sort of why it's important to support this type of research and what the benefits are for working in interdisciplinary research. So as Kristin mentioned, she talked about how it's important to assess, have a separate criteria for this, so it is assessed in that way. And what we've done, and as we've developed this scheme, we have added in a particular criteria. So there are 5 core assessment criteria that are standardised now across UKRI. But we also have added in this fit to opportunity criteria, where applicants need to explain how their research can only be achieved through interdisciplinary research, and how demonstrating that they're integrated disciplines, that there's reciprocal benefits, and that the application has been co-created and co-designed with input from all the disciplines. And these are sort of the 3 elements that we believe are important to interdisciplinary research. And they also need to sort of demonstrate that they have disciplines from more than one council as part of that assessment. So when we first started the scheme, we were using the definition from the REF 2021 Interdisciplinary Advisory Panel for Interdisciplinary Research. And this talks about featuring significant interaction between two or more disciplines and moving beyond established disciplinary foundations in applying or integrated research approaches. And this was the definition we have, and we gave this to both the applicants and the assessors, but we hadn't expanded on that. But through the course of developing this scheme, we have really now sort of unpacked this and are able to give much better guidance to our applicants and our assessors about what we mean by this. And this schematic from a publication by Trestle tries to sort of show the differences between disciplinary approaches, multidisciplinary approaches and interdisciplinary approaches. And as you can see, so with multidisciplinary approaches, the research doesn't require the disciplines to be integrated. They can still work in their separate sort of work packages, but it's the sort of, and they produce sort of individual results that then sort of combine to come together to address that research question. And that's a completely valid way of working. Whereas in interdisciplinary research, the research question requires the integration of those disciplines and the combination of methodologies to sort of come together to develop those, to give that sort of research outputs and results to address that research question. And so now we've got some really good guidance on what we think really good interdisciplinary research looks like, and it has these three components that was in that criteria. And so the first is the co-creation and co-design of the project. And this is asking applicants to really evidence how all the disciplines have been involved from the start in developmenting of the project, defining the vision and the project goals, and sort of allowing for sort of constructive debate and collaborative writing. So you don't end up with a discipline that is just sort of brought in at the last minute if there's some sort of spare additional funding, or just to sort of say, oh, at the end we need a social scientist to sort of address this, and they're brought in at the very end and they're not involved in the design of the project from the start. The second is the reciprocal benefits. So this is demonstrating that there's lasting impact on each of the contributing disciplines, and that they're gaining something by being part of the project. And it's only and it's learning from their from being part of that project and not from their own single discipline. And when we say that there needs to be reciprocal benefits, we don't mean that reciprocity needs to imply equal benefits in a quantitative sense, but actually there needs to be some level of reciprocity for each of them to make sure that they're not sort of just bolted on or being a service provider discipline to the others. And then finally, it's the integration of the disciplines and demonstrating work packages are not siloed, that there's a culture of collaboration and parity of power across the disciplines, and that the project has a clear plan of how it's going to integrate those and have effective open communications, and that sort of in the development of the new methodologies are going to work across all disciplines. And also the final really key important thing is making sure that the early career researchers on the project are actually going to be enabled in acquiring those really strong interdisciplinary knowledge. And I'm just going to unpack these three sort of elements in more detail. So for the co-creation and co-design elements of the applications, what we're really looking for is the evidence that all the disciplines have been involved in the creation and the development of the proposal. And this might be through building on previous research projects, or by bringing people together to have exploratory seminars or workshops to really shape sort of what the challenge is and how those different disciplines can come together to solve that challenge. And it's really important to define the vision of the project and the project goals from an interdisciplinary perspective, and that all disciplines can align with that. And that provides a really strong base that can then be returned to throughout the project as it evolves. And then it's also really important to think about the collaborative writing processes and how everyone can contribute to the drafting of an application, whereas in a single disciplinary proposals, the pen is usually held by an individual, or in multidisciplinary work packages, they're written up separately. So if you're working in an interdisciplinary way, you need to think about how you're going to enable constructive debate to shape the problem and really be able to challenge each other's ideas in a sort of safe space, and that you're making sure that you're utilising all the skills and expertise of the team members in developing that unified strategy. And you also need to think about sort of what the governance is going to be to provide direction, ensuring that it remains interdisciplinary, because there's a sort of tendency for disciplinary subgroups to sort of retreat to their sort of siloed ways of working. So it's actually, how are you going to actively work against that? In terms of reciprocal benefits, projects need to demonstrate that each discipline will have some benefit from being part of the project. And it's, as I said, it's not about learning from their own discipline, it's about what they're going to learn from engaging with other disciplines. And they're only going to learn something that is possible by being part of this project and working with those other disciplines. And that could be adopting a different approach to research, or a new methodology, or new evidence to enhance the field. But there's also some softer skills that you can learn from each other. So, for example, learning how different disciplines work within their respective cultures, sharing knowledge and best practice and approaches that will benefit each other. So, for example, some disciplines sort of work as very large collaborations, whereas others will work as really small teams. And different disciplines are able to work at different speeds and have different flexibility in their approaches, and whether they sort of can change direction or not mid-project. And also actually seeing your work through someone else's methods can build on each other's expertise. And being sort of questioned about your own research can open up new ideas. And we don't expect equal amounts of reciprocity, as I said, for each discipline, but as long as every single discipline has some form of benefit, then it won't feel like that discipline is a sort of spare part, or as Sam likes to say, just been bolted on as a service provider. And then the third element is the integration of the disciplines. And in your project, you will need to articulate why an interdisciplinary research approach is the right approach for your research challenges and the questions you're aiming to address. It might be that a multidisciplinary approach is perfectly valid. And there's this quote from Christian Pohl that highlights this and says that you need to have a clear plan of how you're going to work together, and that integration will not happen passively as a sort of byproduct of people just working on the same thing, but actually needs to be an active and planned endeavour. So with an interdisciplinary research project, you're going to need to have a clear plan for integrating the disciplines. And this includes establishing effective and open communications to ensure that sort of shared learning and co-production of any project innovations. And then thinking about how, speaking those different languages, how are the different disciplines going to become familiar with the perspectives and tools of one another? And how are you sharing the resources and outputs? Can you have shared working spaces that you can set up both physically and virtually to promote that integration and build those relationships? And consider how you need to offset issues of collaborating remotely if you're not all located in the same geographical space. So either due to the different types of workspaces, so lab-based versus desk-based, or even in different countries and time zones. So you need to think about setting up a framework to integrate all those disciplines in the execution of the project, and how you're going to ensure that the development of the methodologies will work across all the disciplines. So how are the work packages being led? And can you have leaders from different disciplines assigned to each work package so the different perspectives are represented? And then also, how are you going to discuss and adapt to the emerging findings and co-develop the project as it evolves, and dynamically adapt to the research plan as a collective? As I said before, it's really important to create a safe space for promoting a culture of collaboration and valuing the diverse perspectives. And so how do you establish the expectations and shared personal aspirations of all the team members, and how you allow for that constructive debate and to be able to critique research designs without discord within the team? And then again, thinking about the governance to ensure that you have that parity of power. So what will you do to address any power dynamics that might impede communications? And how is the sort of project being led? Is this being shared, or can it be rotated? How are compromises being made and decisions agreed? And it's really ensuring that you get that power balance right. And I think that addresses one of the questions that came up. And finally, something that came through in all the high scoring proposals was that they had really clear plans for early career researchers or the postdoctoral researchers working on the project, really thinking about their training needs and how they're going to acquire those strong interdisciplinary knowledge on the project. So is this done through skills exchanges, or could they attend sort of conferences from each other's fields? How are you going to enable them to work collaboratively across their tasks? As I said, co-location is especially important for building those relationships. But is that possible within your disciplines and with your project? And if not, how are you going to further enable that? Could you have them shadow one another to gain insight from the different aspects of the project, or possibly having a mentor from a different discipline? And are there training opportunities for them to broaden their skill sets through sort of university modules or courses to upskill them in those different disciplines? Or actually put in place some within team training where they're learning from each other and learning about their essential research ideas and methodologies from the other discipline. And in doing so, they're going to overcome those language barriers, and they're going to make this an active process and not a passive one. So that's about sort of developing interdisciplinary research proposals. I'm just going to come on to actually the assessment of interdisciplinary research and what we're trying to do with the scheme and many of the issues that Kristin raised. So in theory, UKRI can accept any proposal that comes in, and we will manage it through our cross-council remit agreement, and we will look to put the application through a single council responsive mode scheme with input from another council where it's relevant, and seek reviewers from that. But often with interdisciplinary research, if it goes out to external written review and to referees with single disciplinary expertise, they have they may struggle to sort of understand and assess the application appropriately, and they may see the whole proposal as flawed if their single discipline part is not cutting edge, and actually the novelty is in bringing the different disciplines together. They might be unfamiliar with different presentation styles, so different disciplines sort of have different ways of presenting their work, either in work packages or narrative descriptions. And actually there might need to be compromises in sample sizes. And so as someone from a single discipline may see that as flawed if they're not understanding the compromises that have been taken place. And they can make judgments on the entire proposal without understanding the synergy and the importance of the interdisciplinary approaches that are being done. And they might not understand those challenges of interdisciplinary work and team dynamics. So for the Cross Research Council Responsive Mode scheme, we have looked at how we're assessing these proposals, and we have set up an interdisciplinary assessment college. And at the same time as we put out the call for round one proposals, we put out a call for members of the research community to join our college, asking people who have experience of interdisciplinary research, either undertaking it themselves or through supporting it as a technician or a research professional. And so they have a really good understanding of what interdisciplinary research looks like. And we've also given them this college training at each stage of the process. And this has been led by Sam, who's on the call today, working with Catherine Lyle, who is a professor of interdisciplinary research at the University of Edinburgh. And we have, through each of the rounds, we've gone through training at the outline stage and the full stage, really helping them sort of develop their approaches and understanding of how to look at these proposals and really think about actually how they can address sort of when there's divergent opinions from the different disciplines in assessing those proposals. And we had a huge number of applications to join the college, and we appointed about 300 college members to cover the breadth of the remit areas that UKRI covers. And in terms of how we manage the panels, we needed to think about actually how we would divide these applications up into reasonable sized panels that we could manage the assessment process. And we thought about, dividing them up into maybe sort of strategic challenge areas. So, for example, the environment or health. But actually, we wanted these to be sort of agnostic to particular challenge areas, and we didn't want it to be driven by those challenges. And we also sort of didn't want to divide them back up into the Research Council, because that sort of went against the whole point of this scheme. So what we did was we came up with 5 research domains that broadly align to our Research Councils. So we have the Engineering and Physical Sciences, which covers EPSRC and STFC. We have the Earth, Environment and Biological Sciences, which covers the NERC remit, but also parts of BBSRC, which deals with agriculture and plant sciences. And then we have also the Biomedical Health, which is MRC, and the sort of more health side of BBSRC research. And then the Arts and Humanities and Social Sciences. And what we've done is then combine these 5 into the interdisciplinary interfaces that provides us with a framework of 10 interdisciplinary interface panels, and we've put our applications into the most appropriate panel, and we sort of put our college members across those where how they fit and align best to those applications. Now, it could be that applications fall within more than 2 research domains, but we will look to make sure that they go into the most appropriate one and where there's the most appropriate expertise within our college, so that it's sort of a flexible use of our college membership. Now, it is we have these 10 interfaces to form our panels, but it's one scheme with one budget, and therefore sort of they cannot be treated separately. They have to be treated as one. So we also have to ensure consistency across these panels. We have rovers who are members of our chair pool within the college, and they will observe across several panels during our panel week. And they then feed back to us about actually how the process has been followed and how the scoring has been applied by each of those panels, because we know through our fellowship scheme that is similar to this, working across all of UKRI, that there are some sort of research areas and research communities that tend to score very highly, whereas others will tend to be more critical and score quite lowly. So we need to sort of tension the scoring across those panels. Just in terms of application numbers that we've received, so in round 1, we got close to 1,000 outline applications. When we first launched this, we had no idea of the number that we were going to get in, so I was quite relieved that it came in under that, but that was still a huge number of applications for the team to process, but also for the college to assess. From that assessment process, we invited 175 applications through to full stage, so there was a 20% success rate at outline stage. And then from those 170 applications that we assessed, that 45 were prioritised for funding. And we then awarded 36. And this was done through a partial randomisation process. So what Kristen was talking about in terms of a lottery, we had, the panels were able to assign applications to a really high quality band. So we do this banding process, and we had they can assign applications to our A-star band, which are absolutely outstanding, exceptional research projects. And because of the strength of the endorsement of the assessment, they do not go through randomisation. And then they get to band the other applications, and they can assign applications to those that are really still really very good, excellent quality, and are prioritised for funding, and those that are still good but are not prioritised, and those that are low priority. And it's those ones that were sort of still very high quality and prioritised for funding that went into our randomisation, and we then awarded a further 18 projects to give us our 36 applications. In round 2, we applied institutional caps because we wanted a more robust assessment process, and in order to do that and have the college be able to assess those applications, we put these institutional caps to manage the numbers, and we've received 576 outline applications this time, and we've got 108 applications invited through to the full stage. And as I said, we will do those assessments in November, and we aim to fund another 36 applications. Just in terms of what the portfolio of projects is looking like and across those research domains, this is how they're falling out, but you'll see that sort of 50% of the applications is down to sort of 3 sort of interfaces that are EPS, engineering physical sciences based, and that's with the earth, environment and biological sciences, biomedical health and social sciences. But the proportions of applications that came in terms of what was submitted, and then what was successful at outline, and then what was successful at full stage, it was broadly consistent at each stage. We have seen some emerging research themes with children's interactions. One of those is children's interactions with social media and personal data, and this came up from sort of 3 different panels. We've also seen several applications in infections and epidemics, and just under a third of our applications were addressing environment and climate change challenges. We've also seen several of the applications using artificial intelligence. And just to sort of comment on that, we did see in round 1 a high number of outline applications that were using artificial intelligence, but that the AI component of the project wasn't being developed or modified in any way. It was just being a sort of service provider and being applied. So that was considered multidisciplinary and not interdisciplinary. Just a slide to sort of demonstrate the breadth of the projects, and these are published on our website, and there's a link at the end to where you can see these. I'm not going to go through these in detail now because of time, but just to sort of look at the scheme in terms of numbers, those round 1 applications that came in was nearly 5,000 researchers from over 350 research organisations, and from those 36 projects we funded, that's over 200 researchers from nearly 60 research organisations, and we've also got some international researchers on there. We've been doing an evaluation in real time, and so we've been sending out surveys at each stage of the process, both to our applicants and our college members. And from that, we've got sort of 9 out of 10 respondents are saying that the scheme is going to support previously disadvantaged interdisciplinary research and will be able to identify those strong applications to deliver groundbreaking and transformative outcomes that can only be achieved through interdisciplinary research. And just in terms of what we're hearing from the research community, from our applicants, they are really appreciating the opportunity to authentically describe what they want to do in their research project and not have to sort of align it and change it and modify it in any way to fit with a single council or a strategic theme. They are saying that it's taking a lot more time to develop these proposals. They have to sort of incorporate a lot more voices into the iterations of their bid and their proposal, and they need that time to sort of collaboratively develop the proposals. But they're actually also saying that it's a really, really rewarding way of working. They really enjoyed sort of this collaborative way of working with their colleagues, and has been a really good learning process. And to say that these surveys went out before they knew the outcome of their proposal, so it's not biased in any way. Just in terms of also what we're hearing from the assessors, they're really saying that supportive of the scheme, saying it's supporting excellent interdisciplinary research and addressing some of those key societal challenges, and that they're seeing research that applications wouldn't get through in the standard research council responsive mode panels that they've also worked on, and that actually it's recognising that it's seeing this high risk interdisciplinary research. And what they've also said is that the training that we've done at each stage of the process has been really key in shaping their understanding of interdisciplinary research and how to assess interdisciplinary research. But it's also actually been really rewarding in helping them understand their own research direction and developing their own research projects. So I'm just going to end this. Say there's some slides I will that David will hopefully share with you with some links about the scheme. You can see about the rewarded projects that we've got, and we've also done some videos about sort of what is interdisciplinary research and what I've covered here today. There's also some wider resources that Catherine Lyle has given us, who's done our training on interdisciplinary research for suggested reading on that, and the project that she was involved in the European Research Council. The Shape ID toolkit could give you some really good advice on engaging in interdisciplinary research projects.